And we are live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome for the final stream of the year in English. Tomorrow we have the final stream of the year at all, but it's going to be in French. So welcome. Tonight we are going to have an interview as a little bit of a treat for you for this final stream in English. We are going to welcome someone who knows Europe. We're going to, I mean, as you know, we talk about Europe, but we are going to talk about someone who is as convinced as us about Europe, because our guest tonight is Luisa Trumellini, who is the acting Secretary General of the Union of European Federalists, or UEF, as we usually call them. So what is UEF? The UEF is a supranational movement that promotes the establishment of a European Federation and is particularly active to campaign for reform of the EU that would deepen political integration. So they have been there for a very long time. We'll talk probably a bit about the history of the UEF, but I think they celebrated their 77th anniversary, so they've been around. They know their way around Europe. They know their topic, and so tonight, Mr. Trumellini will tell us about UEF, what it stands for, what are the activities, and also we're going to talk a bit about the EU elections. But before we start. Small reminders of the house rules for anyone who would be new with us tonight. So Ms. Trumellini will stay with us for up to 1 hour. After that, she will go and enjoy the rest of her evening. And as for you, you will be stuck with me for another 30 minutes or something to debrief the interview, answer additional questions, and chat up a little bit because it's the final stream of the year. So I want to hang out a little bit with you, gather your impression, and all that. As usual, I have prepared my question for Mrs. Trumellini, but you have a chat. It's there for that. You can suggest questions there. I will keep an eye on it, and I will read your questions if they are relevant, if we have time, if it's not something that we have discussed already. So you know the rules. And yeah, otherwise I think I covered the basics, so I suggest that we dive right in. Good evening, Luisa Trumellini. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. So you heard me do a little bit of an introduction about who you are, etc. About UEF. Is there anything that I would have forgot or that you would like to add about yourself or UEF before we dive into the interview itself?
Good evening. No, I think you were quite precise. This is a general presentation of UEF, which I recognize. So let's start with the questions, and maybe we can get more into it.
Yes. Well, first, before talking about UEF, let's talk a bit about you. What has brought you to join the UEF, the Federalist movement, and later become the Secretary General of the organization? What's a bit your story with that?
We go a little bit back because I was in the 80s and beginning of the 80s. I mean, it was more or less 40 years ago, and I was a student in philosophy. And as every young woman of my generation, we were very much involved in politics. And when I met one of the Federalists, one of the most important Federalists in Italy, was a professor at the university. For me, it was the discovery of a political thinking that was able to think in terms of enormous values, great ideals, because it was for peace, for uniting the humanity, for really creating a new kind of society able to free people from violence. But it was very realistic at the same time, very much able to think and act according to realism in politics, not simply, testifying a great achievement, but really committing day-to-day, understanding which were the concrete steps forward on that direction.
And so
Europe was on the road. Europe was simply on the road of federalism. It was not just Europe. It was on the road of this.
And so, since you started in the 80s, like, how have you seen like the movement evolve, and also the appreciation of people around the UEF? What's the big trend that you've seen over the past 40 years?
The trend is more on federalism, I would say. The movement remained quite constant. It is not a movement made of big numbers. So we are 30,000 all over Europe, more or less, which is not a big number, but we are very active, which is the difference of people usually very committed. So the numbers remain almost the same in the years. I would say that the recognition, the importance of the role of Federalists slowly grew, and I could see, when I started, it was the year of the first mandate of the European Parliament, the one in which Spinelli drafted a proposal of treaty, a little bit trying a constituent attempt by the European Parliament to establish the European Federation. And it was after many, many years when federalism was really thought as an utopia inside the European community. It was a little bit thinking that was considered extremist. So that was an important step. And all over the years, we had, to be honest, ups and downs. And there are some episodes which are very interesting. And today we have arrived to a point, but this is then maybe to go a little bit deeper into it. We have arrived to a point where federalism has become again a point of reference for European Union as such.
Okay.
So this is the evolution.
And going to the UEF in itself, so like I said, it's an old organization, 77 years old. So that means that actually it was created before the European Union even existed, before the first treaties were drafted. So can you tell us a bit about the history of UEF, how it came to be, and why suddenly, before even like the EU existed, some people say, oh yeah, that would be good if we had a federalist movement.
Yeah, of course, it was not the first federalist movement in history, but it was the first one that could really strive for European federation immediately after the Second World War. The basic text, I don't know if you have heard, it is the Manifesto of Ventotene, written by Spinelli. It was in 1941 during the war. And many political movements during the resistance, the fight against Nazi fascism in the second part of Second World War, even naturally had met this idea of creating the United States of Europe. It is something that existed in European culture, the idea of European federalism with peace, union of the people, and so on. So that became an idea concrete, because after the disaster of Nazi fascism, it was time to rebuild Europe not anymore on nationalism, but on the idea of uniting the people through a federation. So it was established in 1946, and you know that the first attempt was in 1950 with the birth of the coal and steel community, so 4 years before. There were years in which Federalists campaigned for it was called the Federal Pact, and they had a lot. It was a movement at the time where many politicians, but heads of state, of government, were participating. Really many. In Italy, we had, for example, Luigi Einaudi, who was the second president of the Republic, who was very active and close to Federalists, and the same with Alcide De Gasperi, who then became head of government. But it's the same. It was the same in France. It was the same in Germany. So a very strong movements advocating for the European Federation. And when the process started, I do it a little bit quick, but when the process started, there was a sort of dialectic continuous between the Federalist and the Federalist point of view and the Federalists as organization, and the concrete achievements, which were slower, step by step. At a certain point, when the defense, the community for European defense fell, shifted simply to the market. And for Federalists, it was an enormous failure, and there was an enormous movement against this turn of the process, and all the contribution that Federalists gave was to keep this side of the process, federalism, alive, and understanding how you could insert pieces of federalism into a process which was, as it is called, functionalist, that is based on the idea that you were not merging, creating a common sovereignty, but you were integrating national sovereignties.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, so whenever I talk to Federalist people, and we've had a few people on the channel who consider themselves Federalists, every time I ask, I have a different definition of what is federalism, EU federalism. So since you are the Secretary General of the, let's say, the reference in terms of European federalism, what's the definition of federalism according to the UEF?
It's a political thinking, in the sense that it has the idea of a supreme goal, which is achieving peace. As a certain sense, peace is, how do you achieve peace? Uniting people, creating a common institutions. And peace is the precondition in order to develop in the best way freedom, democracy, and also social justice. So federalism is the idea of, first of all, uniting democratically, not simply states which cooperates, but people who create a new political entity. Then federalism is also the point of view of the multi-level government. So when you create a federalist structure, federalism think in terms of government at multi-level. So you have the possibility to have this broader political community without undermining the autonomy, independence, and self-government of the political communities, be they national states or even local authorities and so on. On the contrary, it develops a lot this idea of the capacity of governing problems at the most appropriate level, but in a coordinated way inside a constitutional framework which balance and distributes power in a coordinated way. Okay. It's a very effective system of governing interdependence. This is maybe the best definition.
And so when you go see people and like I'm not talking like necessarily politicians, but more like average citizen, and you talk about EU federalism, how do you say it? Like what are the benefits that you put forward when it comes to explain to the regular citizen, okay, why would we need a European federation? What would be in for them?
When you go to Europe, it's less theoretical, and you more enter into the practice of why do we need Europe? Because we have a lot of problems we are not able to tackle anymore at national level, and that's why you need to tackle them to be that we govern them at European level. And federalism at in the European system is the only way to govern in an effective way, because you create a real political power, democratic way, because you have a democratic system where citizens and states are both legitimizing and controlling the European power. So it's effective because it has the possibility to act autonomously. But at the same time, it's democratic because it has to find consensus of citizens through the parliament, the European Parliament, and government states through what is the evolution of the council into a sort of senate.
And still on the idea of discussing with average citizen and etc., because well, it's not a secret. We live in nation states. That's the tradition that we've had for in Europe for a while now. A lot of people when you talk to them about federalism, they react, oh, it's the end of nation state, and they have the feeling that actually they will be less represented because you're taking away the power and putting it in Brussels. If I simplify things, so how do you answer like the concerns about like EU federalism would mean like taking away the power from the citizens, or at least like putting much further away from them?
We insist on the fact that what they consider a power that nation states now have, it's a fake power. It's an empty power, because you're not deciding in foreign policy. Actually, you're not having effective policies, even at economic level, because you need for certain big issues. So you are simply creating the possibility as European citizens to have a government which rules effectively in those subjects and fields. So it's the opposite. The current system, which is a sort of cooperation and coordination among nation states, gives much more political power to big states than and very little to the others from a certain point of view. So if you are a citizen from a small country, for example, you are very little, you have little power in this system, very little, while it would be the opposite in a federal system.
And so now let's talk about the UEF itself and what it does on a daily basis. Like, what does so UEF is an organization, you're based in Brussels, or not yourself, but the organization is based in Brussels. So what's the daily activity of the UEF?
The daily activity is very much based on their on the sections activity. So we are composed by national sections who are active at national or subnational level, and at in Brussels, in the office in Brussels, there is a little bit of coordination of this organization. So there is a coordination means a lot of things, of course, in such a wide and also organization with a variety of mentalities, because as Europe is made of differences, we are made of differences as well. So is the capability to create a common framework where all the different action taken at national level can really fit into and cooperate, work together for the same political goal with their differences, peculiarities, changes. And the office in Brussels has to make a lot of things. Then there is also the side at European level of the contacts in Brussels, a little bit with the Brussels bubble, European institutions. And then we have a statutory life, which is very intense, I must say, because we are a democratic organization. So we have a representation from the basis to the European level, and our congresses are very real, and also all our bodies.
And so if we focus more on the activities in contact with the institutions, like what is the how do you perceive like your message resonating with the institution? Are the institutions, all the institutions recepting well your message, or you feel sometimes there's a bit of resistance, you have difficulty to access, I don't know, the commissioners or high-level MEPs? So what's the state of the relationship between UEF and the institutions?
The best relation is with European Parliament, to be very, very honest, as you can imagine. There is also the Spinelli Group inside European Parliament, which was created by UEF MEP members of UEF and continues to be very much connected. UEF is also the secretariat of the Spinelli Group from an organizational point of view. And it's probably, this can be added, the European Parliament exists after a 20-year battle of the Federalists to have the direct elected European Parliament. That's why Spinelli was there for the first
mandate.
Mandate.
And with the Commission, it's a bit more distant. Like, I don't know, has the EUF ever met Ursula von der Leyen, or is it more like a bit more of an informal relationship? Like, they know you're out there, but you don't interact with them there directly?
Not so much with the European Commission, apart from single commissioner who we know maybe directly even from our national section. There was a very good relationship with the Commission during the conference on the future of Europe, because there was a presence of the Commission, and UEF was participating into the plenary and the sessions. And so there was the opportunity to develop a very good moment of relationship with them. Then the European Commission is also an institution we have to relate to for our administrative issues, but there is a little bit different. Anyway, the mentality in the European Commission is, of course, a little bit more technocratic than political, of course.
And as part of this activity, maybe more towards the parliament, because you have more of a direct relationship with them, particularly through the Spinelli group, so this group of MEPs who are a bit the group of federalists, to if we simplify a bit, inside the parliament. How big is the Spinelli group again? Like 60 something MEPs, if I recall correctly, or more than that?
I think around, no, I think you're correct. The number is that one, more or less.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as part of your work with the parliament, like, has the UEF ever taken like more of a I don't want to say a lobbyist position, but more like, okay, when there is this report in AFCO, so in the Constitutional Affairs Committee in the Parliament, and so here's an amendment that UEF would be supportive and trying to convince MEP to table them, or you don't at all like meddle with the policy, let's say, of the Parliament and the institutions.
No, we are a little bit not very specific, in the sense that on institutional reform, we really focus on the very big ones. We do not want to lobby on details, on specific measures, and never on policies normally. Even though, of course, we have debates, we take positions also, but it's more something that we do for understanding what is important, the direction for the European Union in order to answer to the citizens and to the expectations of the people. But for us, the main goal is really is as if we have to help, because we are so much focused on this issue, that we are able to help even MEPs to develop more clarity on where the changes are really necessary in order to make the European Union capable to act in an effective and democratic way.
And if we take a concrete example, so recently the Parliament adopted a report on treaty changes, making very concrete proposals on what would change. Since it's like very much the core of the interest of UEF there, like, did you go to the group of 5 MEPs, say, okay, you should target this article, or you stayed still a little back from the nitty-gritty of the report?
No, it was before they were starting the report that we were very active, both during the conference, and a concrete example is the question of the fiscal capacity to the European Union. That was really put by, and in fact it was eliminated in the plenary. It was very much put by the Federalists. Both during the conference process, we proposed this change in the treaty. The fiscal capacity is the power by especially the parliament to have a say in the resources of the union and to become autonomous from this point of view. So when you have a competence but you don't have the money, you cannot do anything. If you have the competence and you have the power to collect money and resources in order to make policies in that competence, then you become powerful. That was the point that we wanted to insert, and we did it. So this is a very concrete contribution that we gave. Also, sending our proposals for treaty change, we sent to the parliamentarians, both in the conference and then after the conference, starting from the conclusions of the conference, we sent our proposals quite detailed and quite precise.
Okay. I have a question from the chat, like more on federalism and what is federalism or not. So you know there's been debates on the idea of a two-speed or multi-speed Europe. So where you would have like the fastest member state who would go more towards integration, and those who want less would stay behind. is the idea of a multi-speed Europe something that you see as if it was ever done, something that you see as a step towards federalism, or something that would go the opposite way?
It's not a step toward federalism or the opposite. It's the only possible way to create a federal core inside the European Union. It's clear that not all 27 states are ready for federalism. So those who are more or less, because most of them must be pushed a bit, but in a case they are not contrary, or they are ready. Let's say also they are ready, and so they can go ahead. So a multi-speed Europe is a necessity if we want to have a European Union, a federal union, but especially a European Union able to reform and to become able to act, to overcome the current stalemates where it stands.
Since you mentioned the stalemate, so that was going to be a bit my next question, but so that you don't see la federalism something that all 27 member states will jump into it right away, assuming that it was on the table of the next treaty reform. But rather, you say, okay, there will need to be 6, 5, 10 group of member states who will go further, do the jump, and then the other will join later on. So you otherwise, like you said, there would be a stalemate that would be impossible to break.
Exactly. Not such a small group. There will be many more. But at least there must be the will of a first group of countries to say, we go ahead anyway. And then if you have a France and Germany with you, then you, of course, enlarge this first group to a much wider number of members. But the important idea is that you do not say we have to be all of the same opinion. We must all agree, because if you do that, you never start. And this was something that blocked the European Union for a long, long time, to say that we need to go ahead all together. That's not true. Also because actually, even those who don't want to enter into a political union, because that is what we are talking, a federal political union, those states which do not want, they are in any case not, harmed by the birth of a stronger core. On the contrary, even the market, the single market, which remains as acquis communautaire, it becomes much more powerful and effective. So they remain at the current level of the acquis communautaire, but in a much stronger overall situation.
But one argument that you hear notably in Eastern Europe when there is a discussion of multi-speed Europe, because Eastern Europe absolutely hates the idea of a multi-speed Europe. One argument that comes out is that they are afraid that if there was a multi-speed Europe, those who are not wanting at this moment to do like the jump, the leap of faith towards like a more political union, they would be left behind. They would become like second-rate member state or second-rate citizens, while the Western Europe would centralize everything, and they would slowly actually break away from the other and leave the other behind. What's your take on this perception, this fear of it?
Yes, of course. We have even inside UEF this kind of debate, as you can imagine, with Eastern sections and so on. But on the contrary, the core is a magnet. So it really strengthens the whole structure and not breaks, letting them falling apart. Of course, think also to the currency, to the euro. Of course, there is a political strength in the core that the rest of the countries cannot immediately share, because they keep their, let's say, sovereignty on many fields that in the core is put at European level. But at the same time, they enjoy the strength of the European policies that are, of course, we are in a structure which cannot but be consensual somehow. So there wouldn't be any imposition by the political core towards the others, not at all, because it is not in the nature of the European Union. So it's really something that would let them grow in the awareness of the utility of becoming part of this political union, and the door must remain always open and never leave behind anybody. This is for sure.
And when I mentioned, oh yeah, should this core be like 5, 6 countries? You say, oh no, it should be much more. And so then the question is, okay, how big should it be for to do like the leap towards a federal Europe? Because someone in the chat is making the point that, well, if the federal Europe is supposed to be a democracy, then there be like a majority of the population that agrees or supports the idea of doing this jump towards federalization before like this core group goals, or so should there be like I don't know, at least 50% of the population that decides to do these jumps for the core group to then go into federalism, or you think okay, if it's a smaller than 50%, it would still be okay as an experiment?
No, it would be much bigger for sure. Otherwise, it would be too elitary. But if you think even to this reform of the treaties that has been tabled by the European Parliament, it foresees that it can be adopted if 4/5 of member states agree. It does not mean that the 1/5 of member states which do not agree remain outside European Union or so on. Then you find with them an agreement how to deal the relation between them. And when you think to 4/5, maybe it's a little bit too much. In fact, there was a clause in the original that the plenary eliminated, saying that it could be a little bit less. But you have to think that only few countries in the end have a very strong ideological opposition. Here there is an enormous inertia. And it's a process that will change the mentality really in its making. And when it will happen, it will be quicker than we think. Because with very slow pace, at this point, we are not going anywhere. So we need, at a certain point, and this is the idea of the convention, to open a process which has its own dynamics, that creates the debate and involve a change of mentality.
I see your point, like of the idea you need to launch the process and then give it a bit of momentum. But if you remember, like the last attempt to have a very big treaty change, so the 2005 and what was called the Constitutional Treaty, we saw that there was at some point a bit of a break between the convention and the idea, like there were for very big deepening of the EU. I mean, we were talking about an actual constitutional treaty, and then the population who felt a bit out of the loop compared to these people who are very convinced and then going into their momentum. So again, isn't there a risk of creating a break if you go too much into, you leave people who are already convinced doing the convention amongst themselves, and then when they have to present it to the rest of the world, well, the rest of the world is like, what is this?
You know, that my interpretation of what happened in those years is that we are not very much able to read what was really happening. What was happening is that inside the European Union, an enormous break was taking place. Germany was turning to be much more nationalist, with a very bad relationship with France. So governments were, on the contrary, thinking to enlargement, to enlarging the markets, not to go into deeper political integration. So the convention was working really a bit, and this is also witnessed by those who were in charge of the presidential committee, was working a little bit out of the reality. It was not the people, it was the political context, which was very much against a political deepening of the European Union at that moment. Now we are in a completely different situation. Public opinion, on the contrary, that all the polls also confirm that they are in favor of having a European foreign and security policy, of being Europeans toward vis-a-vis this very competitive world. So the other thing is that we absolutely need to involve, to make it also a public debate, which this is very much a responsibility also of the mass media, of the information, of those who make communication, and of political parties outside the convention.
And so we talked a bit about 2005. Now we're today, 2023. There's a lot of discussion about EU reform, partially linked to EU enlargement, but still we see a bit of resistance, quite a bit of resistance from member states. Sorry, I'm a bit of a cough these days. And even from countries who are a bit open to the ideas of reopening the treaties. But when do you think we will see like an actual reform taking place? Is it something that will take place during the next mandate, or you think it's going to take a bit longer to convince everyone to go into the actual process of reforming the treaties?
I think that we don't have many possibilities to remain on this issue for a very long time. So I think it should be decided before the European elections. We really hope that in March the European Council will take the decision. And of course, the convention will start in 2025, not before. This is for sure. But in 2025, we should have the convention. We have also enlargement, which is really pushing. I mean, we have a lot of challenges. Enlargement is a little bit the tip of the iceberg of many challenges that we are facing. What do we do with Ukraine? Do we really? This is one of the points. If we do not really, we are not serious in opening the doors to this country, and we are not serious in contrasting Russia's aggression. How long do we think we can resist? Our democracy can resist. This is something very, very pragmatic. And we feel it and we see it. What do we do if Trump is elected in the United States as Europeans? What do we do?
You mentioned in March, next March, the European Council is supposed to take a decision on the demands of the Parliament on opening a convention. Remind me, it's what kind of majority? It's not a unanimity. It's a simple majority, or is it like a larger majority that needs to gather? I confess my treaties are a bit rusty on
No,
this.
Don't worry. No, you can imagine. No, it's simple majority.
Simple majority. Okay.
And it's a hope. I tell you very openly, it's a hope. Because governments have really tried to boycott this reform. The council itself, now with the Spanish presidency, they have played a very positive role. We have the Belgian presidency, which should be positive as well. But in any case, governments in general want to have control over the when and how. So this means these are the rumors that are spread in this moment that Germany and France, because Germany is very, very reluctant to start the process of treaty reform, more than France, I would say. And Germany has started to understand that, first of all, the question of veto, of unanimity, is really stopping the European Union in fundamental decisions that are going to derail the whole process if we do not go to treaty change. So,
and assuming there's a convention, so the discussion about treaty changes are kickstarted. Of course, you will not be able to get the EU federation right away. I think we can agree on that. It's highly unlikely. Then what would be your top priority? Like the top things that you have say, okay, this is the top things that we absolutely need to change in this cycle of treaty reform. Like what's your pick?
I think that the greatest, the very big reforms already envisaged by the European Parliament are the right ones, plus the questions of the fiscal capacity, the creation, the reform of the budget, and which means not only in the size of the budget, but in the way it is decided. Because as you know now, it's a very small budget, mostly composed by contribution by national states, which keeps control and decide at unanimity, even at national level, into the council and at national level. So there is this double unanimity that you need for every, which makes the budgets at European level small and very much limited. Sometimes I think that the European Commission with the budget is making miracles. A little bit of multiplication, like because it's really a very, very small. And so this is another point. But the other point is that we need this address towards a bicameral system, empowering the Commission with real executive powers, which is what is into the proposal of the European Parliament, and at the same time being controlled directly by the Parliament. So there are more powers to the European Commission, but coming directly through elections and appointments by the European Parliament. And then a mechanism decision based on the role of European Parliament together with Council, always a majority at majority. So a sort of state normality in a certain sense. And this is a very important point. Then you need to bring some competencies, and you have to have the financial resources, the fiscal capacity. Yeah. And the third thing is that you do not, because this is the other important point we were talking before, you do not adopt the reform unanimously, but you already foresee that there is a breach of the unanimity in the adoption. So in the possibility to have the reform adopted.
We mentioned already the report that was adopted by the Parliament on treaty reform. I'm sorry again. The vote in the Parliament was a bit wasn't it a bit disappointing to EF in a sense, because the Parliament barely got a majority in these reforms, despite the Parliament being normally very straightforward, very pushy on treaty reform. So, what's your analysis of the vote in itself? And don't you think that there is a chance that actually it weakened a bit the end of the Parliament, because then the Council, who is not very happy about the idea of reopening the treaties, could say, oh well, you see, even the Parliament, who is supposed to be the arch federalist in the institution, actually they're barely managing to agree on a treaty reform. So what's your analysis on that?
It was a little bit scaring, the vote, because it was really strict, and we could see both some political families really splitting on that. It was the Popular Party, but also the left, I must say, less. It was a split in some countries. Medium countries fear to lose their veto and their power in this sense. So there were a mix of reasons on that. And there was also an ideological clash, because in that proposals there were amendments or proposals on policies which were quite dividing. It was not conceived from this point of view as a very consensual document focused on the big issues, but there were.
So you think they went too far on certain topic? They tempted fate a bit too much?
A little bit useless in a certain sense, because they were, in the sense that into a treaty change, a proposal for treaty change, you don't need already to put policies at that detail that were sometimes asked, and which was used maybe more as an excuse not to vote. We have many examples of that. But anyway, that said, what is important is that the vote was positive, and the process was launched, and the Council now adopted it. You know that on Monday the Council agreed and passed already to the European Council
I didn't see that. So what did they agree? They agreed to the passing on the thing, or they made an agreement on substance?
No. To pass, because they only had this task to simply to pass it to the European Council.
Okay, so they put it on the agenda. They agreed to put it on the agenda. Okay.
Not to put it on the agenda, but the Council said to the European Council, here is this request by the European Parliament under Article 48. It is yours. And the European Council is the kind of institutions that has to put it in its agenda and decide to open the convention.
Mhm.
This is much up to Charles Michel now. And this is why I was talking about March, when there is this European Council, this first, in a certain sense, European Council, which could be useful in this sense, and where it should be this decision should be put in the agenda. Of course, it's easy for Charles Michel and for governments to postpone it. Simply say we will put it
later. Yeah.
Later.
And speaking of member state and the council, so are you either even if I understand like the parliament is the natural light, etc., but are you like active to try to convince member states? Like, do your national section, for instance, go knock at the door of the national government, say, hey, hi, we are the French section of the UEF. We call the French government to do this. So, is that something that a bit of a lobbying being done at national level to push the member state in the what you see as the right direction?
Absolutely. In fact, our campaign in this moment is exactly to mobilize our national sections, going to lobby on national parliaments as well, because they have a role to play, and towards the governments and national governments. You know, I come from Italy. It's a task.
Yeah. And is that something that you do on the regular, or is that you say, okay, we are at a key moment, so we are putting all the chips on the table, or like it's regularly you have meetings with governments and all?
Don't make us so powerful, not with the governments.
Yeah, I mean, with ministries, etc.
It depends on the governments, on the ministries, and so on, because there are those who are, of course, more friends of the Federalists and those who are not. So we work more with the parliaments in a certain sense, where we have a lot of contacts with MPs. We also create at national levels this kind of Spinelli group. Sometimes we call them differently, but the substance is that one. And we work. Then we are very pragmatic. We don't have a sort of a fixed structure. It depends very much on the moment, what is at stake, and where we need to work. Since a while, we are working a lot with the parliaments, because since a while the issue of the treaty reform, we are keeping it alive inside the parliaments, and of course towards the government.
And since we're on the topic of national governments and all that, so you're Italian, so and Italy has a particular importance in the history of European federalism, because of Spinelli, the Ventotene Manifesto. So yeah, Italy is not let's say is a particular country in the history of federalism, but at the moment in Italy the government is not necessarily the most pro-federalist. So how do you deal with that? Like, are you still able to push a little bit the Italian government, or you're taking a bit step back because you agree, okay, maybe this coalition is not going to be our best ally in this kind of conversation, despite the history of Italy on that topic?
No, it's not an easy moment. We have had worse moments than this one, to be very honest, but it's not an easy moment. This government is very pragmatic in Italy, and very dogmatic. It's very pragmatic in Europe and very dogmatic in Italy. And they really do not understand what a change towards federalism for Europe would be. They do not have the political culture at all. This makes difficult to talk to them. So we are really, trying with all. There are people, MPs or politicians, who are more open inside some parties or in some cities and levels. I mean, persons, and we are pushing all we can to open a debate with them and to try to, in a very pragmatic way. I tell you openly, we don't want to convince them to become federalists, but that they need a treaty reform for Italy badly needs that Europe becomes more effective on many things, even in public investments, because otherwise Italy is in trouble.
Okay. talking now a bit more about the upcoming EU elections. In June 2024, there's going to be the European elections. So I guess that UEF is gearing up for this election. So what kind of activities are you planning for the EU elections in general? Like not at national level necessarily, but at European level, what is the things you're trying to do at the moment?
Our campaign, apart from having a communication visual, and of course, we have templates that then must be used by the national sections because they work actively towards the candidates, the future MEPs, and so on. And we have, first of all, we will elaborate, we have a manifesto which we have already approved in our Congress, which explains why Europe need to be reformed, towards in which direction, what are the challenges, so why, a 3-page manifesto. We will have a pledge that is a declaration that we ask candidates to sign if they agree, where we ask some commitments, especially on the future, on the future commitment inside the Parliament for the treaty reform, for empowering the European Union, and also to become member of the Spinelli Group. And this is something that then national sections can use, organizing debates with the candidates. A formula that we use a lot is organizing debates with all candidates, also those of non-federalist, let's say, or non-Europeanist parties, and to debate with them the future of Europe in front of citizens, in front of maybe also other organizations. So we try to create a moment of debate on the European issues, which is not always the case inside. You know how.
Yeah. There's not a lot of debates on Europe, on Europe politics in general. And since you mentioned that, in this debate, you try to bring, for sure, like the Federalists, but also like the pro-European, but also those who are not Federalists, but also not necessarily so pro-European. So do you manage to have like, I want to say maybe good relations, but relation of trust that these people who are not necessarily on your side politically when it comes to Europe see that as a good exercise and are happy to come to the debates, or you see they are a bit skeptic because it's organized by the Federalists?
The problem is more with the party of government. Fratelli d'Italia has always been out of our debate because it comes from a tradition of the Movimento Sociale Italiano, the social movement, which was really, inherited a bit of fascist.
It's the post-fascist movement.
So the Federalists did not have political contacts with them. When they did the change, we opened a debate with Alleanza Nazionale, which was inherited, and it worked well. But Fratelli d'Italia came out from Alleanza Nazionale with a very right-wing stance, and we're always out of our circuit.
And what about Lega? Because Lega is also like very much far right. So were they out as well?
No, Lega is terrible, but has always had a dialogue with us because they started from federalism. There is an episode that would make.
Okay, I'm interested. How? At what point in history Lega was federalist? I mean, I knew they wanted to break away from the south of Italy, but I didn't know they at some point they were European federalists. So, I'm curious. Tell me the story of Lega being federalist.
Do you know Umberto Bossi, who was the founder of the Northern League?
Yes, I rings a bell. I'm not an expert, but I definitely know the name.
He was the absolute boss for many decades, and he was the founder. And he was studying in Pavia, where I live, and read one of our manifestos on federalism and decided that this idea he had in mind, that was a good idea, federalism, where for him federalism, then he developed, of course, for him federalism was to have autonomy of government subnationally. And then he worked on that and became secessionist even, but they never interrupted the dialogue with Federalists. It's strange. Salvini is different. Salvini is much more right-wing, much more racist. it's different, completely different. Was much more popular and not populist Lega. It was a strange animal, but they were able to keep a dialogue with the Federalists.
Okay,
And
that's interesting.
culturally, there was some interconnection. Common scholars, think, thinkers that were at least a little bit in common. So many of them who are the old as mentality, maybe they are young, but they were educated in the Bosnian tradition, they remain able to talk with us. Salvini is different. Salvini is completely populist, racist.
Yeah, I remember like for me, Lega is I only knew Lega as with Salvini as the head, and for me it's like the Italian Le Pen. So for the leaving the European Union, etc., etc. So that's why I was a bit surprised when you told me yeah, Lega was Federalist at some point. that was a bit curious to me.
But they keep inside Lega. If you think to Zaia in Veneto, he's the governor of Veneto, and he just said that he doesn't like so much this European Union because he's in favor of the United States of Europe. He keeps a federalist tradition. They are not so. I mean, don't think that they are so much in favor.
No, of course, but still, there's the idea that is there. Yeah.
Yeah, they are more. There is more than we can think.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I would have never guessed that from the party of Salvini because well, I mean, again, for me, it's the Italian Marine Le Pen, very much Exit, etc., etc. So okay, that's pretty interesting. I'm looking if I missed any question on my side, but I think I covered everything. So I'm seeing that we're almost at the hour, so I don't want to take any more of your time. So before I let you go, if people have to remember like one thing from tonight, what would be your message to them?
Strive for a federal Europe because it's really there lies our future and the possibility. We have a lot of potentiality that if we work united as Europeans, we can develop. And we need a federal Europe in order to work, to act united.
All right, that's perfect as a message. That's up to you. So chat. Make sure to thank Luisa Trumellini for her time and for answering our question. Thank you as well from my part. It was very interesting to hear from you. Chat, you can of course learn more about the Federalists and everything on X. I put the X, the at on X below the video feed, so you can find the activities and figure out a little bit more. Mr. Trumellini, thanks again. So I wish you a very good evening. I hope you enjoyed the experience. It was very interesting for me at the very least. So
thank you very much. It was very, very nice and interesting for me as well.
Great. So, well, have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, chat. Let me take things and we can start the debrief. There we go. So tell me everything. Tell me everything what we thought of the interview. I have my notes as usual here on my little notebook. So let me know everything that you thought, and we're gonna do otherwise a little checking things here and there. Oh, you got the ads. Well, you can watch the replay, or you can subscribe. That's also an option if you want if you don't want the ads. Okay, but otherwise, what did we mention? Something I took note. I don't know if you're aware of something that is called the Ventotene Manifesto. So what is the Ventotene Manifesto? It's like the name implies, it's a manifesto that was written by Altiero Spinelli back in 1941. So during World War II. And what is Ventotene? It's an island in Italy that used to be a prison. It was used as a prison by the fascists during the fascist regime, and Altiero Spinelli was imprisoned there during the war. And while in prison, he wrote in 1941 the Ventotene Manifesto, which was the birth, or maybe not the birth because the Federalist movement existed, or the Federalist idea existed already before, but at least the first draft of what could lead to a federal Europe. So he wrote that, I think, if I remember well, like on toilet paper. He wrote that in his cell. And this paper that then got leaked out and sent out and became the Van Toten Manifesto has become, let's say, the founding document of what became the European the EUEF, the European Federalist, and is to this day still like a document of reference for the European Federalist. And Altiero Spinelli, so the guy who wrote this, he became like a great figure of the European movement in general, not just the Federalists, but in general the European Union. Spinelli is considered like one of the big names in the EU. He became an MEP. He created the Federalist movement in the parliament. At some point, he created what was called the crocodile, the Club du Crocodile. Basically, it's back when the parliament is meeting in plenary in Strasbourg, and so he had gathered a group of like-minded MEP who are also Federalists, and they used to meet in a restaurant in Strasbourg that still exists, that is called the Crocodile, and they were talking about how they could turn what was at this moment the EU, and how they could turn it into something more, going more and more into federalism. And so this club, which was known then as the Club Crocodile, evolved and then started like a campaign inside the parliament to push the ideas of federalism. Spinelli wrote a draft and had it adopted by the parliament of what would be like it was the Treaty on Europe, if I remember, and what basically inspired very much like the upcoming treaties of the EU that increase the level of integration of the EU at political level and beyond. So all that to say that Altiero Spinelli, a very, very big name when it comes to European history, and to this day, like was mentioned, there is a Spinelli group in the parliament, so the group of Federalists inside the European Parliament, which is named, of course, after Altiero Spinelli. He has actually the main building of the parliament in Brussels is called the Altiero Spinelli building. So, like I said, very big name when it comes to the EU history. Something that she mentioned as well as a bit of a shock for the Federalists is when I was going to say the member state, but actually France rejected what was called the European Committee on Defense, the ECD or CED in France. So that was in 1954. At some point, like what was then the communities. Yeah, I think it was the communities. Basically Europe, had drafted the idea of doing a European defense with very basic, not so basic, actually very advanced for the time. We were like almost getting the European army back then, and it was very much pushed notably by the French. And at the moment where it was supposed the treaty was written, it was accepted at EU level. It was at the moment of ratification by member states, and when you arrive in France, actually, the French voted against. The National Assembly in France voted against because there was a change of government. You had what we call the Gaullists, so the right wing, the conservative, the new conservative in France that saw that as a threat to the nation state, a threat to the sovereignty of France, and so they rallied with the communists, not early enough because the communists were dead against the ECD, the European defense, because they saw that as a threat to the Soviet Union, so they were dead against it. So it was a weird situation where you had the communists allying themselves with the conservatives to defeat the ECD, which, again, ironically enough, was initially an idea that was pushed by the French, but by a twist of France and a twist of fate, the idea got killed in 1954, and it broke a bit the heart of the Federalists, who were a bit disappointed to see then the EU go into the only European, the economic route and not the political route so much. And to this day, I mean, we're in 2023. The discussion on European defense is always a bit sluggish. Whenever I see that, like whenever I read documents on the the ECD, so back in the 50s. I'm always amazed on how they managed to get that through, so far. I mean, it was a different context, and it was the Cold War, etc. But still, I'm always a bit amazed on how far they got to with this text, considering where we are right now. What else did we talk about? Something interesting I should mention is that national power is actually fake power. It's a mental construction. Wait, why would they see it as a threat against the USSR? I thought they'd see it as a threat against national strength, if anything. Depends. Depends on the point of view. The communists saw it as a threat to USSR. Why? Because it was, of course, a European defense. So what was France, Western Germany, Italy, and the Benelux? This group of countries were in the US sphere, so to say. And so, of course, having a common European defense supportive and supported by the US right at the door of the Eastern Bloc was seen as a threat in addition to NATO. So from the communist point of view, they were dead against the idea because they saw that as a potential threat to the USSR and the Soviet bloc, so to say. But from the conservative, so the Gaullists, so the Gaullists, so the conservative, for them, it was more a question of sovereignty, because de Gaulle in France is a figure that is all about the sovereignty of France. France being an independent sovereign power, so. His whole shtick is about making France strong and independent in the world. He broke out into the decision of breaking France from NATO, from the Central Command of NATO. He always made the whole thing about being aligned a bit with the US, but also independent. So there's a whole thing behind this idea of Gaullism that is still like a big influence today in French politics. But for him, having a European defense was something that would dissolve the sovereignty of France. So it was dead against it. And also it was a way also to try to politically weaken the current regime back then in France, which was the Fourth Republic. He was actually trying to weaken it and replace it by what is now the Fifth Republic, that was basically designed by de Gaulle when he took over in 1958. So if that had gone through, Europe, the EU could be a lot more sovereign. If the EC had gone through, Europe could be very different from what it is today. I don't know if it would have accelerated things even further in terms of political integration, etc. But that would be a very different thing. That's for sure. I don't want to try to do how things would have evolved since the 50s if they had been the ECD, but that would have been a very big step forward. Very, very big step forward in terms of political Europe. What was I saying before? I had national power being a fake power. So it's the fact that member states possess power. In the end, they only possess power because we agree, or how can I say it? We recognize that they have power. It's a mental construction that says, you give the power to who you recognize is powerful. So it could be national, it could be European, it could be regional, it could be whoever you feel like. So the power is fake because if the citizens tomorrow decide that the power should be European, well, the power will be European and not national. It's not an absolute thing. Oh, people are sovereign; they have the power given. Exactly. The sovereignty is something that is derived from the people. There's not something automatic in the fact that national authorities should have the power and not European, not regional, not whoever. Spinelli Group I already mentioned it, so that's the European Federalists in the more or less in the European Parliament. So 60 something. I need to double check exactly how many people is in the. Let's see. Give me a sec and I will tell you. Spinelli Group, European Parliament. The Spinelli Group. Up. Board and members. blah 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 blah. All members. Well, I'm not going to count, but yeah, that looks like a good 60. Yeah, 60 something. A good 60 something. I'm gonna put the link in chat if you want to have a look to the website. But those are the pro-Europeans, like they are hardcore pro-European, they are hardcore federalists inside the European Parliament, and they have a very close relationship with the UEF as an organization, because the UEF holds the secretariat of the Spinelli, so they are doing the secretariat work of the Spinelli group. So there's of course a very close link between the two groups. We had a long discussion about multi-speed Europe. So what is multi-speed Europe? For those who missed the conversation, it's the idea that, so at the moment we have this idea that the EU is a uniform body. Everyone moves together. The 27 move as a block. If not everyone agrees, you don't do anything. Multi-speed Europe is the idea that actually you don't need to have everyone on board to do something. If there is a core group that is more or less important depending on the policy, depending on how you imagine multi-speed Europe, then this core group could decide to go further in EU integration, to go to become more federalist, more federal Europe in a way, and then act more as a core. And then those who do not want, then they would just stay a little bit behind, do not share like this additional competence. They would still share like the core of the EU, so the common market, the trade relations, these sort of things. But all the things that are additional, they do not have to join it automatically. And so it's a way to say, okay, those who want to go further, they are free to go further, and the rest, those who do not want, they don't necessarily have to do it, and they can change their mind. They can decide to join the thing later on if they see that it works. It's a very controversial idea. France is very pushy of the idea of multi-speed Europe. It's something that they push for a very long time. So it's an idea that is rather popular in Western Europe, and the French being the chief among them, because they see that as a way to go faster, to be a bit the pioneer in a number of policy, and set the example, and try to then convince the other to join, without having to convince everyone on the thing. On the opposite side, you have particularly Eastern Europe, who in general absolutely hate the idea of multi-speed Europe. Why? Because they see it as a threat to their place in Europe. For in the interpretation of Eastern Europe, they see it as a way from Western Europe to break away from them and to leave them behind. And there's always this fear in Eastern Europe that they are treated, and they would be treated even worse than that in multi-speed Europe, as second-rate countries, second-rate Europeans. So there's let's say the elite Europeans, so the Western Europe, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, etc., and then there would be the secondary European, those who don't matter that much, which would be the Eastern Europe, the Eastern Europeans, and that would be ignored and in a way that they would get less money, because most of the money would go to the core group. So slowly they would be left behind and lose, let's say, their ability to have a say on Europe, where it should go. So that's something that is very much a big idea in Eastern Europe, and one of the reasons why they absolutely hate the idea of multi-speed Europe, particularly when they hear the French push for it. Yeah, but the Eurozone isn't Schengen, who isn't European. Multi-speed Europe is already a thing. True. To an extent, you're right. You're right. The Eurozone... Yeah, Schengen, yes. I would justify... I would agree to an extent. Euro, not so much, because not everyone is in the Eurozone, it's true. But the Euro has always been seen as something that is supposed to become the currency of all Europe. You had some who had exemption, particularly the UK and was it Denmark or Sweden? One of them has an exemption, but the idea has always been that everyone else should get into the Eurozone at some point, either directly or at some point. So the countries, for instance, in Eastern Europe, Poland or Bulgaria, or Bulgaria, does Bulgaria have the euro? I don't remember. No, not yet a member. But the idea is that they join at some point. So you have this country who actually, well, try to do economic reforms, etc., to get to the point where they could get the euro. But the eurozone has always been seen as something that is supposed to be Europe, but since you need some economic reforms to be able to do it, you have some that are a bit in the waiting room, so to say. It's not really like the exclusive to the other. So I see your point, but it's not fully multi-speed Europe. It's a multi-speed Europe goes a bit deeper than that. Are these fears justified? Oh, that I'm a bit I could not say. I can't read the future, so I don't know if in a multi-speed Europe it would be proven to be right. There's a bit of history behind that, because the Eastern country have the history of the Soviet Union, the Eastern Bloc, where they were already second-rate countries, second-rate citizens in the Soviet Bloc, so they have these fears of always being this complex to an extent of being seen as inferior to Western Europe. There is, I will grant that it's true that particularly when we talk to about France, there is a bit of arrogance and the idea of some in Western Europe who really see Eastern Europe and say, okay, you're with us, but we're the OGs, we're the ones who know better. So either you agree with us or you just shut up. So there is as well. It's true that there is a bit of elitism in part of in some in Western Europe who look down a little bit on Eastern Europe. That is a little bit true. Does that mean that they would automatically become second-rate citizens? I think that's pushing it a little far. I think that the real political reason why they oppose a multi-speed Europe is that, well, in a way, it removes the ability to block things from the equation. Because today, if you decide that okay, it's either 27 or no one, well, that means everyone has a veto. If you open the idea that there is a multi-speed Europe, then suddenly your ability to block things become less meaningful. And it means that if you have the big countries of the EU, if you have Western and Nordic, the Western Europe agrees, that's FT part of the European population, FT number of member states who can convince others, so they will potentially have more ways to go without them if they have reservation. So I think it's more of something that is political, in the sense that it removes leverage from them, and that could force them to go faster than they would be comfortable to when it comes to European integration than anything. But again, here it's a bit reading in a crystal ball. I can't say with absolute certainty, yes, they are right, yes, no, they are wrong. There's arguments to be made both sides, let's say. What else did we discuss? Oh, yeah, the 2005 treaty, constitutional treaty. Question, chat, make me feel old. Who was born in 2005? For starters, let's start with that. Who was born in 2005 when there was the treaty, the constitutional treaty on Europe? Make me feel old, chat. You were 4, but you were born. Oh. You know, Nepal, you know what's worse in what you say? For my generation, so I'm 35 now, for my generation, there's a thing where people who were not born or just born during 9/11, during the attack on New York. Whenever I meet someone and say, oh yeah, no, in 2001 I was not even born, yeah, I feel very old when it happens. You're 11, you were 20, but it was not your focus, yeah, makes sense. You were 5 days old during 9/11. I feel old. Oh shit. All right, but going back to the topic, so 2005 is a bit of a traumatic date in in the Europeans, the pro-integration federalist movement, because it was a moment where you had a treaty that was doing a big leap forward in terms of EU integration. That got rejected by a couple of referendums. So same thing as the ECD. You had an agreement at European level. The governments were agreeing, Parliament was agreeing, and you had to go through the ratification. So national parliaments and the population had to vote to agree to that. And there was a bit of a coup de théâtre because you had France and then the Dutch who had a referendum and voted against this treaty. Ironically, that was also a big political moment for me because I was in high school at that time, and it was the first time that I got interested in politics because, like at school, my economy class, political science class, my teacher decided, okay, we're going to use this debate that's currently happening about Europe, and you're going to, one group will defend the treaty and one group will not defend the treaty, and so I really got into it, and so I was to as part of this work to do the debate with my fellow classmate on the should we get for or against the treaty. I really got into it and follow the debate. It was the first big political thing debate that I followed. Brexit was that moment for you. That makes sense. That makes sense. And so it was like a bit traumatic for me, the 2005, because I was in favor of the treaty, and the rest of the French people obviously didn't agree with me. So the referendum got negative. The treaty got rejected, and it put like a big dent into the European integration movement, which was a bit how can I say it? Not redeemed, but more. There was a bit of a catch-up in 2009 when there was the Lisbon Treaty, because basically the Lisbon Treaty is the light version of the Constitutional Treaty. Like they took out many of the more like state thing. Like there was a whole thing about the anthem, the fact that it's called a constitution. There was what else was there with that? Like there was a lot of things that was making it an actual constitution, so very close to an actual state. And there was a whole preamble. There was was it already the charter on the European Charter on Human Rights that was in there? But yeah, there was a bunch of fluff in there to really push the idea of Europe as a state, so to say, and so that got rejected for many different reasons. Some people were opposing the idea of federal Europe. There was a lot of populism already then, because in France at least we had the whole episode, figure that became legendary in French politics. That is the Polish plumber. The Polish plumber is something that terrified the French people in 2005, because there was this idea that the Polish plumber was going to come in France and take the job of the good French worker. So that was a thing that terrified people, even if there was nothing to treat you about it. Like it was most of the campaign were about things that had nothing to do with with actually was in the treaty. I think the campaign was also done like very badly, like because the government basically. So imagine the treaty like something that is a 100-page thick treaty. So it's international law. What the French government did is that they printed it and they sent it to every single household in France. And that's it. Well, not that's it. There was a campaign around it, but they sent the treaty like this. So you can imagine that already international law is already complicated for lawyer. For the average person, that's just gibberish. That's just gibberish, and they're going to read everything in their country, understand everything in their country. So that's. I think that's for me. That's something that was really like a bit what the fuck, as you say. As I mean, I understand the idea of showing people what they're voting for. I think it's a good idea, but throwing them that and say, okay, here's the treaty. I think that contributed to the backlash and all like the false ideas that were circulating in the campaign, and it contributed to poison a bit the debate. But yeah, bottom line is 2005 bad moment for the Europeans with the French no and then the Dutch no. the Dutch also had the referendum and rejected it. And after, like, it was like, you know, like the French voted on a Sunday and the Dutch voted the next Thursday, if I remember, and both were negative. And after that, everybody understood that it was dead. The treaty was dead in the water. But in 2009, there was a Lisbon Treaty where they basically cut out all the fluff out of the constitutional treaty and turned it into simplified it a little bit, etc., and turned it into the Lisbon, what is now the Lisbon Treaty, which is the current structure of the EU. But yeah, that was a bit traumatic, and that stayed in the back of the mind of many people, because governments remember 2005, if we go too far, and our public opinion may turn against us, and that may kill the process. In France, you have a lot of Eurosceptics who say, we voted against in 2005, and then in 2009 there was the Lisbon Treaty, who went against the will of the French people. So 2005 is a bit of a traumatic episode when it comes to the constitution of Europe, etc. And that plays still a role in the how people approach the topic of EU reform, because they're like, okay, let's not have a 2005 bis in 2020 something. If we do a treaty reform that is too hasty, too ambitious, etc., that people would turn against us. But speaking of that, so the Parliament, we discussed it at some point. The Parliament voted in Parliament. That makes sense. They voted a report asking officially the opening of a convention. So what is a convention? It's a preliminary step to opening treaties, reopening treaties. A convention is basically you gather. It's the first step one of the first steps to reopen the treaties, to do treaty reforms, so changing the fundamentals of the EU. And the convention is you gather a bunch of people, so representative of the European Parliament, representative of the state, of the national government, representative of the Commission, representative of civil society, of the national government, of national parliaments, etc. You gather all these people, and you have a first discussion, a first exchange about EU reform. And more specifically, okay, what could a future EU reform do? What should be done? So it's a bit of a brainstorming exercise. And at the end of it, they make a bunch of recommendations, and these recommendations then are sent to the member states, who open the actual reform of the treaty in an intergovernmental forum. I think it's the official name, intergovernmental forum, where there you have the 27. You would have the 27 member states who would gather and negotiate the actual treaty change to the treaty. Taking inspiration from the recommendations that were made during the convention. And so the Parliament made the step of asking officially the opening of the convention. Now the ball is in the court of the European Council, so the member state and the national head of state and government, who have to take a decisions at a simple majority. So you don't need unanimity. They have to take the decision on whether they agree to reopen the treaties, and then the process would be kickstarted. Member states are not so keen on treaty reform these days, because for many different reasons. Some honest, some are a bit more good excuses, let's say. For starters, like the big issue with treaty reform is that even if you agree to an opening of the convention, ultimately, any kind of treaty reform needs unanimity. All the 27 member states we need to agree to it. And the problem is that there is not really a consensus within the 27, as of today, on even the direction of Europe. Like if I simplify, you have on one end of the spectrum, you would have Viktor Orban, definitely not a federalist. Far from it, rather the opposite. Who wants to keep a Europe of nations. He doesn't want a political Europe. He wants Europe to reduce to minimum. So you have Viktor Orban on one end of the spectrum, and on the other end you would have Emmanuel Macron, who is more not federalist. Macron is definitely not federalist, but at least pro-integration. He wants more political Europe. He wants more policies being done at European level, and so you have these two opposites among member states, and they want a very different European Union. So the idea is, okay, what's the point of opening a process where we know that there is no consensus? Like, there is no... The 27 do not agree on even the direction of travel. If Macron is not federalist, what is he? Hegemonist? He's not, definitely not federalist. Macron is very much in favor of intergovernmental Europe. So he wants a strong Europe. He wants Europe as a sovereign body, not sovereign body, not that's the wrong word. As a independent, autonomous power, but strictly linked to national government. So national government are still the ones in charge in this Europe. And like Nepal said, there's also this idea that Europe to be the best tool possible for French power. So that's something that is more related to the French approach to Europe, which is a bit particular because it links to the history of France, etc. etc. But there is this idea, in France at least, that France, as you know, is used to be a great power. I think now Europe is accepted as a middle power, mid-range power. Still a power, still nukes, but a mid-range power. But in France, there's this idea: okay, we're maybe no longer have the empire. We're no longer like a great power. But in this case, the best way for us to compensate that is Europe. Europe is the best, is the new vessel for our power. So to become a great power, to become very influential again, we have an interest in a strong Europe. Because then this strong Europe, under French influence, would be a relay to French power. So that's a bit the French, historically, that's a bit the French approach to Europe. Which is one of the reasons why many other Europeans are a bit wary or skeptic whenever the French are pushing for something at European level, because they are very much aware of this idea of the French, and so they're skeptic because they think, okay, France does not do that because they are convinced of the European thing. It's because they want Europe to defend the French interest. And so whenever the French are very pushy on Europe integration, on defense particularly, etc., the other countries are always a bit skeptical or a bit prudent, because they say, okay, are the French really doing it because they're convinced they want to do something in European interest, or they just want us to be an excuse to defend the French interest and Europe being at the service of France? Would you say the same about Germany? Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that Germany has identified Europe as a relay of power, but not for the same reason. Germany is not, let's say, there is no, what's the word? Nostalgia. There's no nostalgia from Germany about a lost state of power. Germany still remembers World War II. They're very much like the modern Germany is very much like formed around the trauma of World War II and never again. So the Germans do not want the last thing that the Germans want. Germany wants is to be perceived as a major power, or powers that force the other to do things. That's the last thing they want. Because World War II, Germany cannot be this kind of country again. So the other way then the Germans see to still defend German interests, etc., is to go through Europe. But it would not be. It's not a Europe at the service of Germany of German interest necessarily. Still influenced by Germany, but not at the service of Germany. So it's slightly different from the French, let's say, approach. France is really much okay. France needs to be a great power, and the way to do that is through Europe. The German, it's a slightly different. They have completely understood, like much earlier than the French, I would say. They completely understand the potential and the power that Europe can wield, and so that's why they do a lot to try to influence what's going on in Germany, in Europe, sending people who work on what Europe is doing, etc. And so make sure that it's compatible with German interests, but it's not like Europe is not there to be the vehicle of German power. It's a slightly different philosophy. Germany wants a seat at the UN Security Council, and they can't help but be the fourth largest economy in the world. They're a superpower. I will not call it a superpower. Like a superpower today, superpower day, you have the US. There's an argument to be made about China, but Germany, no, definitely not a superpower. They are like France, like they're upper mid power. Like they're definitely in the top range, but they're not like superpower. They're not superpower, definitely. Like they still make yeah, they're a great power, but they're not like top tier. Like they're not S tier in terms of power. Like basically, it's accepted that if you remember, like if you go back in history, the Suez Crisis in 1956 is the moment where France and the UK lost their status as great power. Why? Because at that moment, the French and the British were defending a particular position in the Suez Crisis, and the German and the Soviets and the Americans forced them to yield. The Suez Crisis. Put it in the chat. 1956, if I remember correctly. And basically, that's understood as the moment where France and the UK stopped being a major power because they had to give up. They had to give up under the Soviet and American pressure. Yeah, it was a long segue, but yeah, basically, I'm rambling, but you have this debate on the direction of Europe, where you don't have the same direction. Sorry for the mic. The same direction, and then when you go into the substance of it, again, disagreement on the substance, and then there's a question of timing. The council basically sees that they have enough on their plate not to deal with the treaty reform right now because it's a topic that is divisive. There is no consensus. There is no clear way forward. So they will just be stuck. They will be fighting each other for no real purpose. At the moment where you have the war in Ukraine, you have 10 different crises. So the council has very much this idea of we need to stay united. And if we do the treaty reform, is something that can only divide us. So that's why and also there's the memory of 2005. How are the public opinion going to react to this thing, etc. So there's a bunch of reasons why the council is definitely not keen on reopening the treaties right now, even if some of them agree that it should be on the agenda at some point. The Germans, the French very much say, okay, we need to do at some point reopen the treaties at the very least before the next wave of enlargement, because there are issues that needs to be fixed, but they're still a bit kicking the can down the road because they don't want to deal with it right this instant. What else do I have? Oh yeah, the Lega. Oh, that story about Lega being having at the moment a stint into federalism. That's a very interesting story. I will dig into it later on, but that was a rather funny story, given that for me, like Lega, so the Italian part of the Italian far right, in my mind, like I said, it's the Italian version of the National Front of Marine Le Pen, etc., etc. You know, I was like, oh yeah, actually, they used to be they used to be a bit federalist. So I was like, okay, that's a bit odd because Lega is not very, at least under Salvini, not very pro-European, even if now they're trying to do a bit of a fudge, trying to say, yeah, but no, actually, we're not anti-European, we just want a different Europe. Let's say that that's their post-Brexit kind of analysis of Europe. But, well, at the core, they remain pretty much the same. But yeah, that was a bit the notes that I took on my side. Any questions you have on your side? Otherwise, I'm gonna do like more of the conclusion and also talking a bit about next year, because that's the final stream we're doing this year, that I do this year in English. Tomorrow I have the actual final stream but it's gonna be in French. So if there's anything you want to ask or something. You could be there. Oh, glad that you were there. Yeah. But yeah, okay. So like I said, final stream. Then I'm gonna take a bit of a break, going on holiday, like you all. I haven't decided when we're going to restart yet. Probably somewhere mid-January, I think. I think I have to see, because I have to move for work, etc. So I need to figure out a bit that. I need to figure out a bit the content. You had a question about. Go ahead. Go ahead with the question. Go ahead with the question, even if it's unrelated. I'm happy to take it. But yeah, so next season will start somewhere mid-January. I need to figure out a bit the content I want to make. I need to get in touch with the parliament, because I'd like to do some stuff there. And of course, think about what we can do, what I could do for in relation to the EU elections, because the elections are in June 2024. So of course, I'd like to be active in that moment, to hopefully talk to explain Europe to more people, and get them interested, and follow a bit what's going on in terms of campaigning. So if on your side you have suggestions on type of content that I could do, go ahead and go on the Discord, which reminds me of not Discord, socials. Up. There you go. Follow me on my socials, and if you have ideas, suggestions on content, things you would like me to see, to do, go in the Discord and share your ideas. They are all very much welcome, and we'll definitely use them for thinking of content, or even suggestions on the way to do stream, and that sort of thing. Alors, let's see. I think I read that Macron does not want to exactly rebuild the famous church that burned down, Notre Dame. So I'm not sure. I wanted to know why he's playing and how the Pope took that discussion. No, on the contrary, Macron was very much in favor of rebuilding Notre Dame. Notre Dame is like the big cathedral in Paris, very much like a French landmark. Macron, within days after the rooftop of Notre Dame burned, he said, "Oh yeah, we're going to rebuild it exactly the same within 5 years." I think he said, but that's not happening. So no. Macron definitely wants to rebuild Notre Dame exactly the same. That's for sure. All right, but yeah, so that's pretty much what I had for you tonight. You will force-fed that information. Oh well. Notre Dame is the most visited monument in France. It's not the Eiffel Tower. Okay, interesting. In a way that makes sense. It's easier to access Notre Dame than the Eiffel Tower. So okay, makes sense. But yeah, okay, so that's it for me today. I hope that you enjoyed the interview. You enjoyed this season of content, which was a bit lighter on interview, I confess. This season was a bit weird. I didn't get that many people or that many MEPs were keen to do interviews. I can't explain it, to be honest. Like the other seasons, I always had too many MEPs who wanted to join to come on the show, but this season was a bit weird. Hopefully next year will be better. They will be on the campaign track, so they will want to be seen. But yeah, we will see. I hope you enjoyed this season. You enjoy the content. As usual, if you like what you saw, do not want to be asked by Qatar. No, that's not Qatargate. Qatargate, they have no problem. And plus, Qatargate was 1 year ago. 1 year ago, I had no problem with the with things. So. With finding people, so that was that's not the issue. That's not the issue. Target. I mean, my last interview, the MEP was very happy to talk about Target. Yeah, that was not an issue. But yeah, if you don't follow already, of course, follow the channel. If you have a Prime lying around, toss a coin to your streamer. That's always very much appreciated. It helps, and it allows you to skip the ads. That's always useful because now Twitch is pushing more and more ads, and I have limited control over it. So if you want to not have the ads, send the Prime. That's always appreciated, and that's good for you as well. Otherwise, I wish you all happy holidays. For the French, tomorrow final stream at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We're gonna do like a random discussion, talk about the EU. We're going. Thanks Nipal for the sub. Very much appreciated. Thanks again. So tomorrow we are going to do like a general discussion about Europe. We're going to do some gaming if we have time. So it's gonna be chill. Tomorrow is gonna be chill. But for the other, I wish you all a great holidays, and I will see you all in January for the next season. Go in the Discord to follow the news and discuss. Any kind of feedback is always welcome. So I will see you then. Have a good one, guys. Happy holidays. Bye bye.